Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Book Club with Caden Kelly. I am Caden Kelly, and I'm here today to bring you another book that we read. And I'm not going to spoil the title yet, even though you already know what it is. But I want to say good morning. And I want to say thank you so much for listening. If you're here coming to the live, thank you so much for showing up. I got one viewer in the live, so thank you, whoever you are. And then everyone else that's been listening for the last several months, one episode or several episodes, I appreciate you. It's another week. Happy Mother's Day. Happy belated Mother's Day to you mothers out there, those of you celebrating. We had a solid week last week. Before I get too far into it, I also want to say, I got a checklist of things to say this morning. It's 8:30 a.m. It's Tuesday today because I was not here yesterday, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But I think I told you I was going to be here at 8 today, but I'm here at 8:30, and I knew I was going to be here at 8:30, so I don't know why I told you 8 o'clock. I must have forgot where I had yoga. I have yoga till 7:30, and it's in Ogden, so I got to drive. I got to drive home and get ready and stuff. And that one I sweat way too bad. Ooh, I got to fix the focus a little. Right. Yeah, it's not perfect because I have to turn the autofocus off because that little box will follow me. It's still not perfect. That's okay. I've been posting new episodes of a new podcast called Here's the Point with Caden Kelly, and it's basically this podcast but summarized in 15 minutes. And you can find that on my Instagram. I post the whole episode on my Instagram, but I also post it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts with everything else. So you can check those out there. If you like this, if you hear a book that you want to listen to, but you don't want to read it, and then you don't want to listen to me talk about it for an hour and a half, go listen to that. My goal is to talk about the book 15 minutes or less. You can again, Here's the Point with Caden Kelly, or you could go to my blog, CadenKellysBlog.wordpress.com, and you'll find all of my shit there. And yeah, on the blog, it's got some old blog entries and links to my Instagram for some old TikToks. I don't put as much effort into that as I have. I've been spending a lot of time on my business, on my carpet cleaning business. So I'm excited about the progress I'm making there, but it's putting most of my attention into that, and it's hard. Life is hard. I wish there was more hours in the days, and I wish I had more energy, and I wish I didn't have to sleep. Man, it takes all my time, and I have to sleep, man. I have to fucking get a lot of sleep. Anyway, so thank you. Last week I went to Montana. That's why I was not here yesterday, is because I was in Montana till yesterday evening, running a Spartan race, another Spartan race. That's 3 down. You've been here for all 3 of them. My first one was July last year, or June or July. I think it was July. And then I ran another one in November, and I ran one on Sunday, this last Sunday in Montana near Big Fork, and it was absolutely beautiful. But it was the hardest race of the three by far so far. It was basically running up a mountain for 6 miles, and then a lot of really steep downhill. Not a lot, but there was really steep downhill. It was mostly crazy uphill hiking. My calves are completely destroyed, as you'd expect. My knee hurts, and the bottoms of my feet hurt. So I got my ass kicked. But my goal going into it was not to place or to have this crazy time. I wanted to I didn't really know what to expect. We did 6 miles. We did a 10K in Arizona, but I injured my shoulder, so I did it really casually and didn't do the obstacles. I just ran the trail with my friends. So this time I was like, I'm going to kick ass. It was in the age group division, which is the competitive division. So there was no assistance, and there was no what would you? Oh no, you have to do burpees if you. So if you're in the open group, then if you don't want to do an obstacle, you could just skip in. You don't have to do burpees. But if you're in the age group, the competitive group, and you don't complete an obstacle, you have to do burpees, or you have to do a penalty lap around the trees and shit. So my goal was just to kick ass at all the obstacles, and I did. And I missed the spear toss. It hit the whatever, like the foam at an angle, and so it didn't stick. So I had to do 30 burpees. I was thinking about it, if you could do a burpee in like 2 seconds, like, you go down, push up, stand up, jump. You think you could do it in like 2 or 3 seconds. So it takes like 90 seconds to do. It doesn't take a ton of time to do 30 burpees, but the obstacle was at the end of the race, so I was already exhausted. So I probably took too much time. Anyway, felt like I kicked ass. I'm real proud of myself for how hard I pushed myself. Again, my legs are destroyed, my feet, and but I'm feeling great. And I'm happy to be back in Utah. I would move to Montana in a heartbeat. We flew into Kalispell and stayed in Kalispell, and the race was in Big Fork, which is pretty close to Glacier. All of that's really close to Glacier National Park. So big mountains, look just like the Utah mountains, but also, Eden or Morgan area, a bunch of farmland. It was like driving through the outskirts of Logan or Morgan, Lots of farmland, long roads, houses few and far between. Beautiful. Big lake like Bear Lake. It was beautiful. So, Aru, right? I'm a Spartan now. That's 3 races. I got 2 more this year, and I'll get my trifecta. And I was anxious leading up to it, but I was stoked to get it done. So we're back. Now we got a new week to kick some ass. New week ahead of us, and we're going to take it one step at a time. One step at a time. Da-na-na-na. We got to get back to the gym, and so I did some yoga today. It felt nice. All right. Enough chitter chatter, huh? Let's get into it. Last week, I read Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen, Stopping the Spiral of Toxic Thoughts. And I told you I didn't want to spoil anything last week. But today I'll tell you that this took me down a road I did not expect to go. It's an ultra Christian book, super Christian book. Jenny Allen, I think she's a minister. She has a ministry. So she talks about God the whole time. And the reason I didn't know anything about this is because I didn't look into it, because the book was gifted to me by my mother, and my mother didn't tell me. I don't even know if she knew. I think she just saw the title and said, "Oh yeah, Caden has toxic thoughts. So Caden's a toxic person. So I think this book will be good for him." Turned out that it's a super Christian book, and I was cringing for in the intro, she says, "Oh, not only is it a Christian book, like to help you strengthen your faith in Christ, but it's also directed towards women." It was a woman's Christian book. So I was, I was, to say the least, I was a bit turned off. But I, you know what? I remember seeing a tweet by Ryan Holiday, who's the Stoic guy. He wrote "Obstacle is the Way," "Courage is Calling." He's that guy. He manages or he owns the Daily Stoic social media. Who I love. I love his content. I love his books. I remember seeing a tweet from him saying, "Here's a friendly reminder: if you don't like the book that you're reading, you don't have to read it." So the whole time I was reading this, that's what I was thinking. But the reason I decided to finish it was because I have one. I think maybe that tweet was mostly designed or mostly intended for not like for fiction books. I don't know, because this, even though this was an ultra Christian book for women, it had a lot. I reminded myself it's a very popular book. It's got a lot of reviews on the Apple Books app, but so I figured it's got to have some good content, and it did. And I'm going to tell you what she said, and I'm going to tell you what I think about what she said, and that's what the whole point of this podcast is about. We read the books, and we break down the content, and we try to apply the wisdoms that come from them. So, Jennie Allen. Let's see if I can find a little bio. Yep, here she is. Sweetheart. She read the book from, got this little bit of a southern accent. Jennie Allen is the founder and visionary behind Gathering, Gathering, an organization that equips women to know God more deeply and to discipline others in their own lives. Through simulcasts and live events, SIMUL casts, probably like live events, simulcasts. Has reached more than 1 million women in nearly 200 countries and has had 7,000 women leading in position. Excuse me. Nearly 200 countries and has 7,000 women leading in-person gatherings around the world. I can't read this book. She has 7,000 women leading in-person gatherings around the world. There we go. A popular podcaster and sought-after speaker, Jennie has taught at Women Faith conferences, Women of Faith, Catalyst, Q Conference, and SEND, North American Mission Board, as well as some of the largest churches in North America. She is the author of several books and study guides. She has a master's degree. Oh, here we go. She has this is what I'm interested in. She has a master's degree in biblical studies from Dallas Theological Seminary. She and her husband Zach live in Dallas, Texas. What do you learn with a master's degree in biblical studies? I'm gonna Google that real fast because is it just like she just reads the master's in biblical studies curriculum. Let's see. This is from ccu.edu. The Masters of Arts in Biblical Studies focuses on the exegesis what? Focuses on that word and interpretation of specific sections and books of the Bible. The degree equips students to be competent in biblical exegesis, the practical use of the biblical languages, and understanding the culture and land of the Bible. Oh, so okay. Exegesis is the practical use of the biblical languages. I want to look up exegesis. It's critical explanation or interpretation of text, especially of Scripture. And it sounds like this. Exegesis. Because it has to sound like Jesus. Exegesis. Can you hear that? Can you hear my speaker say that? Exegesis. So it focuses on exegesis and interpretation of specific sections and books of the Bible. So she just read the shit out of the Bible and Oh, that focus looks way better. Yeah, focus on the content of the Bible, not the history of the context, it sounds like. Or maybe that's what the interpretation of specific sections, yeah, understanding the culture and land of the Bible. All right. Well, in any case, she had a lot to say, and she was really well versed. But also, how well versed is somebody who writes a book and can, you know, just Google scriptures while they're writing a book? I bet she's super well versed. All right. Just like every other book, this book is broken down into 3 sections, 3 parts. Part 1, all the thoughts. Part 2, taking down the enemies of our minds. And part 3, thinking as Jesus thinks. All right. Let's get into it, huh? Let's talk about Jesus. Part 1, all the thoughts. Chapter 1, thinking about thinking. She says, I took a quote, our emotions are a byproduct of our thoughts. I saw a TikTok earlier this week or last week about someone explaining, maybe it was, actually I think it came from this book, but I saw another TikTok about thoughts. But what just came to mind is she explains every thought you have has a direct impact on your brain. It changes the chemistry of your brain. Every thought you have, every single one. So do you want to talk about compounding thoughts, or like we talk about the compound effect, compounding interest? We could compound our thoughts as well. The more good thoughts that we have about ourselves or about things, the better thoughts we'll have down the road. They will compound. But at the same time, the more negative thoughts you have, the more they will compound, and the worse off your thoughts will be. Chapters 2 through 4 is the story of her faith crisis. And I didn't take any notes. I just mostly remember that she felt abandoned by God, but her friends and her family helped her find her faith again. That's all I remember, and that might not even be right. Chapter 5, where thoughts are captured. She focuses most of her book on this idea of capturing thoughts. And it comes from a scripture about, I think Paul in the New Testament says something about taking your thoughts captive. So she says, take this thought captive. I have a choice. We don't get to choose our circumstances, but we do get to choose how we think about it. She credits this to Paul from the Bible. Yes. So we don't get to choose our circumstances, but we do get to choose how we think about it. Doesn't that sound just like everything the Stoics say? Yeah. One thing that one comparison that I'll make to scripture, all the scripture that that she talks about, reminds me of the Stoics, and vice versa. And I can't help but think that kind of everyone's on the same page, kind of. When you listen to Jordan, or you go read Jordan Peterson's book, or you listen to Jordan Peterson, he gives a lot of biblical references. And I don't remember where I heard this, but I remember hearing Peterson saying, not saying that everyone needs to be Christian or something, or maybe he was being criticized for all of his biblical references, but he was saying, at the very least, they are stories of the human condition, and they should be considered just like all other philosophical texts. So from a secular perspective, scriptures they give pretty much the same philosophical ideas, I suppose. So, and just like what she just said here, she might, Paul says this from the Bible, but the principle's the same, whether it comes from Seneca, whether it comes from Paul, whether it comes from Siddhartha, Buddha. You have a choice. We don't get to choose our circumstances, but we do get to choose how we think about it. I don't care who says it. I love that thought. She says, I made a note saying, fixating on Jesus liberates you from the devil, including your bad thoughts. Quote, God is stillness. God through community. Oh, these are examples of phrases she used. God in stillness. God through community. Trust his good and sovereign purposes. Humility, gratitude, service. So, basically, you are what you think. Hey, mashed potatoes. Good morning. Basically, you are what you think. So, being being a Christian, she suggests, or she implores you to focus your thoughts on Jesus. Um, there's a question. Well, yeah, I'll save that thought. There's an awesome thought that comes up later. Chapter 6: Make the shift. Self-help isn't enough to overcome toxic thoughts. You must put your trust in Christ. Self-help without Christ is baseless. That help, or self-help, always comes up short in the end. Wow, this pod do best Sunday school. Do be Sunday school. This pod do be Sunday school. Yeah, hey, I don't know what you meant or where you got here, but we're doing Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen, and it's I didn't realize it until I started reading that it is a woman's Christian book. And it was a gift from my mother, so I read it. And I actually kind of liked it. However, I'll read that part again. Self-help isn't enough to overcome toxic thoughts. You must put your trust in Christ. Self-help without Christ is baseless. Quote, self-help always comes up short in the end. I disagree with this because I don't believe in Christ, and because I think you can't. Well, I believe that Christ is real, but I don't believe in his mission. Rather, I think everybody benefits from self-help. Maybe it doesn't have the same effect as, it has a different effect rather than putting your faith in Christ or your faith in God. But here's the comparison I'll make. When you, rather than, and we'll talk about this too, this comes up later, but rather than focusing on your own greatness or your own ability of self-help, your own ability to overcome hardship, she says to surrender yourself to God. But the philosophy that resonates with me is, instead of surrendering yourself to God, rather surrender yourself to your circumstances. Surrender yourself to the world that you live in, because none of that is in your control. Just like God is not in your control. You might be his child, but you don't have control of what God does in your life. So in the same sense, surrendering yourself to your circumstances is the philosophy that resonates with me. I think it's saying to rely on something bigger than yourself. I feel like that's been a common theme in a lot of the books you've read. Yeah, exactly. Instead of that was a comment from Mashed Potatoes. Rather than, and this is ego. This is what the Stoics. This is what Ryan Holiday says in Ego is the Enemy. When you putting trust or putting confidence in yourself to overcome hardship is ego. Rather, letting that go and surrendering. I like the word surrender because it implies that it's what you're giving yourself up to is not in your control. And what is not in your control? Basically everything. How people interact with you, and the economy, and your health isn't always in your control. You might, just like me a couple weeks ago, I tried to do everything I could I tried really hard to be healthy, and I still get sick. People still get sick. So a lot of things are out of your control. So instead of saying I am enough to overcome my ailments, she says surrender yourself to God. And that resonates with a lot of people. That doesn't resonate with me. I would rather surrender myself to, like you said, to something bigger than myself. And something bigger than myself, in a secular view, is the world. It's the universe. It's I don't want to say energy because I don't like the term energy either. But it's the same principle. Yeah, and that's one thing too about, that's one reason why I wanted to keep reading this, is because I like to see the similarities between the Christianity perspective of how to live a meaningful, happy, healthy life, to what I resonate with, which is the is it's like instead of God being the end all be all, it's the nothingness of the universe that is the end all be all. So, yeah, I'm just, again, you know me, I have opinions about everything, so I'm going to just say what I think. This is my fucking podcast anyway. Quote, we are made to experience life in peace as we begin to think less about ourselves and more about our Creator. Same thing. I believe we experience, she says life and peace. Yeah, we begin to experience peace when we think about less about ourselves and more about the bigger picture, or more about, Stoics refer to it as nirvana, or the oneness of souls, of life, not just your Creator, but and Stoics really, it's like the nothingness of the universe. I'm not going to say, I don't want to spoil my next book before the end of the podcast, but it's a Stoic book, and it has I just had a thought about this. So anyway, we are made to experience life in peace as we begin to think less about ourselves, ego, and more about our Creator, or the oneness of the universe, or the nothingness of the universe, or everybody else on the planet, whatever. I suppose here's my thought. I suppose a similarity is Buddhists teaching that you don't exist as an individual, but as the one, and Stoics teaching basically you don't exist. Yes. So that's part one, taking your thoughts captive, all the thoughts. And in truth, you are what you think. Just like you are what you eat, literally, you are also, your consciousness is what you think, what you repetitively put in your mind. Part two, taking down the enemies of our mind. Quote, taking every thought captive is not about what happens to us, it's about choosing to believe that God is with us. Taking every thought captive is not about what happens to us, it's about choosing to believe that God is with us. Each chapter is your arsenal to defeat the enemy. Okay, yeah, and I could cruise through this, but I have some thoughts. Each chapter is like a virtue to help you have better thoughts about yourself and about your circumstances. Again, the thoughts that you put in your head about, well, yeah, I'm being repetitive, but everything you put in your brain determines your attitude, it determines your well-being, your happiness. So even when shitty things are happening, and she refers to shitty things and toxic thoughts as the devil. If you are well equipped to tackle those toxic thoughts and convert them into positive thoughts, you succeed. And this is the point of the book, stopping the spiral of toxic thoughts. Chapter 8. What was the title? I stopped writing chapter titles down after this. I was working on my garden for most of this book, and I severely burnt my back. Sunburned on my back. So I got a little lazy. Okay, chapter 8. Holding space for silence. I choose to be still with God. Quiet time with God. We are afraid of facing ourselves and, in turn, facing God. This is the comparison, I think, of yogis meditating and Christians praying. It's time spent with your thoughts, time spent in your mind, and then Christians are thinking about their God and the plan that God has for them, and Stoics are thinking about the nothing, that there is no. I don't know if that's necessarily true though. I think I've written in my brain that Stoics believe that there is nothing, but I'm just going to tell you now. Next week I'm going to be talking about Epictetus's Discourses and Selected Writings. And he's a firm believer in Zeus. So he talks a lot about, I'm like a quarter of the way into it, and he talks a lot about Zeus and the plan that Zeus had, like the Zeus's creation for the. I don't know if he talks necessarily about the plan that Zeus has for humans. But let me Google that because I don't want to continue to misspeak if I'm not understanding something. I'm going to say, do Stoics believe in God? Oh, just came right up. The Stoics often identified the universe with and God with Zeus as the ruler and upholder, and at the same time, the law of the universe. The Stoic God is not a transcendent, omniscient being standing outside nature, but rather it is immanent. The divine elements is immersed in nature itself. A lot of talk about nature. I like the comparison of the all. You want to talk about your creator? I'll talk about the universe, about nature, because at the very least, we all come from the ground. We all come from the dirt, and from the rawness, the raw materials of the world, and we're conceived in our mother's womb. And then I guess the difference is, is there a soul that enters the body, or do we just have consciousness because we're this living, breathing, thinking being that can interpret the universe and ourselves. Mashed potatoes. It would be funny if you pivoted to being a big Zeus guy. It would be would be really funny. And the Greek gods. Yeah, maybe I just will. I've been watching a lot of Viking shows, so I'm starting to convert to Odin, the Allfather. But okay, the universe. So, but I think the point is, regardless of your belief, the principle is the same. Surrendering yourself either to God, the Christian God, or surrendering to Nirvana, or the oneness of life, or to Zeus, or to nature. And it sounds like, just from this Wikipedia quick definition, that the Stoic God, who is often referred to as Zeus, or identified as Zeus, is not a transcendent, omniscient being standing outside nature like the Christian God, but is rather immanent. The divine element is immersed in nature itself. So, Zeus works presently, is like alive in nature presently. I guess it's not omnipotent, or omniscient rather. Okay, yeah. So I think that's important to clarify. I don't want to misspeak for the Stoics. So, chapter 8 again, though, quiet time with God, meditating. I even saw, it looks like Kayla got a new meditation book, and I just took a quick glance at it before I got started this morning, and the page that I flipped to explained the origin of meditation, the word that came from, where it came from, and everything. And it basically means thinking about your thoughts. So when you're meditating, again, you're not necessarily overcoming your problems. You're not rather, you are thinking about what your thoughts are. You're thinking about what enters your brain, the current state of your body. You're just observing it. The yogis explain it as stepping out, basically viewing yourself from the third person, observing your thoughts and observing your physical state. And prayer, if you're praying the correct way, you're pretty much doing the same thing. You're just kind of doing it with an object in mind, which is Heavenly Father. So you're communicating either literally or metaphorically with somebody else, talking about your current state, talking about your thoughts, talking about your body, what you're experiencing physically. So she says it's important first to, if you want to overcome toxic thoughts, you have to spend quiet time with God, or you have to spend time meditating. You have to at least be able to observe the thoughts that you're having and the things that you're doing that have a direct impact on your body. She says no distractions, no numbing. Distractions, like social media like Netflix and video games and porn and food, over consuming food, uh, anything that distracts you from your current state. And the hard thing is, everybody loves distractions, and I talked about distractions, and I think the best thing the healthiest thing anybody can do is to have good distractions. However, not everyone has good. Always in when I was in Montana yesterday, we were exhausted after our race, and we spent the entire day in our motel and watching TV, watching TikTok, watching Instagram, watching anime, whatever. Drinking beer, eating carne asada. It was a really good time, but it wasn't any productive time. It was all numbing. And if you want to okay, so it's important to know, at least to say, if you want to improve your thoughts, if you want to be in a better state, stop doing those things. You have to spend time alone with your thoughts or with God and contemplate the thoughts that you have, the decisions that you're making first. This is the first step. I made another comment. I said, "What are you thinking about?" Someone asked her at a conference, "What are you thinking about when you're thinking about God?" Because Christians always say, keep your thoughts on God, think about God, focus on Christ. But someone says, when you think about God, what are you thinking about? I thought that's an excellent question. And I said to read this part towards the end of chapter 8, and I don't want to ignore that. So I'm going to go towards the end of chapter 8 and see if I can find... Well, the rest of my thought on my notes says, when bombarded by negative thoughts, instead of reacting to them, turn your attention to gratitude, humility, patience. When someone is rude, instead of being consumed by anger, choose to react with kindness. I think the part that I'm talking about, or that I'm thinking about, it's got to be right here somewhere. Here's what she shared with us, and I'm stressed. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it was. Because right towards the end, she's like, it's like a poem, but I don't remember it being a poem. Here's the question. Jenny, I know I'm supposed to be thinking about God instead of all this chaos and clutter. One question: what do you think about whenever you think about God? I sat back stunned. I don't want to spend too much time doing this. So, I think this is it. What I want you to see in this and the next several chapters is that with each weapon God has given us to wield in this battle for our minds, we get to rewrite the pattern while taking back the power He has given us. In other words, we can cognitively reframe our situations with the new pattern looking like this. I'm upset and I was passed over, so I will choose to remember that God has not forgotten me. I'm angry and she was rude, so I will choose to meditate on God's kindness toward me. So before this, she gives examples saying, I'm overwhelmed because I have so much to do. I'm upset because I was passed over for the promotion I deserved. I'm anxious because I'm running behind on my projects. You know, these negative, toxic thoughts we have. I'm overwhelmed. I'm upset. I'm anxious. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm stressed. So how do we handle those thoughts? This is what she's saying. I'm upset and I was passed over, so I will choose to remember that God has not forgotten me, turning the negative thought into a positive reaction. I'm angry and she was rude, so I will choose to meditate on God's kindness. I'm overwhelmed and I have way too much to do, so I will pause and choose to thank God for existing outside the boundaries of time and for empowering me to accomplish only that which I need to do. When you're stuck in a downward spiral of distraction, what truth will you shift your thoughts to in order to combat the lie that anything can satisfy you, like quieting yourself before God? I love that principle. When you have toxic thoughts, instead of being consumed by them, so like I said, instead of being consumed by anger, choose to react with kindness. And whether you're anyway, you're a Christian or not, you know where you're at. It's good advice. Humble yourself to take the good message for whatever it is. I have to work on it every time I hear any kind of Christian propaganda. And my TikTok is riddled with Christian propaganda because the algorithm knows that I have a strong opinion towards it. So I try really hard to hear turning your thoughts towards God and seeing the good message that it is. Even though I don't believe in God or Christianity, I can still take the good messages that are being taught or being conveyed and interpret them in my own way. I guess I have that right, but I have to be humble enough and patient enough to do that, and thoughtful enough. And you can too. Don't be like me. Be better than me. Didn't LeBron James say that in a commercial? I just came up with it. Chapter 9. Liveliness. I choose to be known. Okay, so the first one, meditate on your thoughts. That was chapter 8. Meditate on your thoughts. Chapter 9. My only note was humans are bred to be recognized and loved. It's our biology. We were made to be connected, she says, with others and with Christ. Connection is a fundamental human characteristic. And just like she says, it's in our biology. And it served a tremendous purpose for our hunter-gatherer ancestors for their survival. If you were an outcast in your tribe, you were often cast out and did not survive. So you wanted to fit in, you wanted to be liked, and the way you are liked is you have connection with other people in your tribe, in your group, in your circle. So yeah, connection. That's chapter 9. That's the only note I wrote. And I don't think there's, like, what's the Christian application, you know? Oh, well, yeah, here's a little subsection in chapter 9, the temptation to go out alone, to try to figure out life on our own. We're not meant to do that. We're hardwired to connect. We operate better together. Yeah, she says it's better. We operate better when we focus when we work with God. Just like we're meant to connect with others, we're meant to connect with God. Yeah, and my interpretation or my belief, we work better when we connect with each other and when we connect with our nature, with our human biology. Whatever. It sounds cliche, but that's where my thought goes. So we're bred to connect with each other. Chapter 10. Focus on what's true. What's real. Oh, I wrote this weird. Focus on what's true. What's real, to combat negative thoughts about yourself and things happening to you. And then I said she shares good examples in the book. Let's see if I'll find chapter 10. Yeah, it's another form of taking a negative thought and converting it into a positive reaction. Focusing on what's true. Focus on what's real. I remember Ryan Holiday saying pretty much the exact same thing. If focusing on we can't focus on what's not real because they're not. Or rather, we can, but it has no benefit for us. We can think about things that aren't real or what's not happening to us, but it serves no purpose, especially for our well-being. Focus on what's real. Let's see. When you recognize the lie, this is from the book, chapter 10. When you recognize the lie is resting heavily on your shoulders, you can take off that suffocating coat and set it aside. What fear-filled thought is Satan using to suffocate your faith? Say it. Name it. I'm afraid that I won't be able to withstand whatever the future might hold. She says, and then the conversion is, I choose to believe God will not allow me to be tempted beyond what I can endure and will always give me the strength to overcome temptation. I'm afraid that everyone will abandon me. Rather, I choose to believe God has promised not to leave me, and he always keeps his promises. So, this is the example. When we think I'm afraid everyone will abandon me, or I'm afraid of being found out, or I'm afraid of being rejected, um, that's not real because it hasn't happened, and it's a toxic negative thought. So rather than focusing on what's not real, focus on what's real. Instead of saying, or when you think I'm afraid of being rejected, convert that thought to I choose to believe God has accepted me as his child and will never leave me. It's just a positive reaction to a scary, uncomfortable thought. And you cynics out there, you'll say, "Well, God's not real, so it's not a good thought to have." I mean, the point of life is not to get everyone to conform to your beliefs. It's about uplifting others and helping everyone live and lead. My motto: happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise lives. Wisdom, have wisdom to be successful. And as long as you're not tearing other people down with your beliefs, then go ahead and believe it. But the point is not to. I don't think the point is to convert everybody to the same truth, to their God or to their ideology. It's about uplifting them. And in this case, if you're afraid of being rejected, and if you believe that God is your literal father and that he will never abandon you, that's positive. That's a really positive thought. And if you believe it, you should cling on to it. So, don't let the haters tell you otherwise. Anyway, that's chapter 10. Focus on what's true, not on what's fake, not on what's not real. Chapter 11. Cynicism is only a poor way to look at life, even when you think you're protecting yourself. She claims beauty is evidence of God. The complexity of nature and living organisms has to denote that there is a creator. I think. Oh, hello. Good morning. I put a rug down so I didn't wake you up. I'll come up. I'll be done in like 30 minutes probably. Okay, I'll call you. All right, say hi to the podcast. Okay, I'll call you later. Yeah, I'll be here for a little while. Let's see. Mashed potatoes. It's crazy how truth stretch across all belief systems. They just say it in different ways. Yeah, totally. I have and yeah, that's such a wise and it's that having that kind of attitude. I think it's missing in a lot of cultures and in my own brain a lot of the time. You know, having I don't want It's not about me and about my background, but it's also my podcast, so I'm going to say whatever I want. So, having a Mormon background and growing up believing that this was the only way to experience life or to find truth or to find meaning in life was very stressful, and because at some point it stopped resonating. It felt good for most of my life, especially as a child when I had nothing to compare it to. But as I grew older and started reading books, it all started really when I came home from my mission and I read Homo Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari about human origin. And anyway, I realized there's so many different ways to look at life, and some are like scientific based, would say that it's all true, but subjective experiences are all. I think most religions are subjective experiences, but right, what you just said is the point is, there are truths that there are these universal truths that we're uncovering as I read all these books, like you just said. There's what was your earlier comment? I feel like it's been a common relying on something bigger than yourself. It's a common theme in all the books you've read. Yes, it's not. You get to identify what that is, what that bigger thing is. And some people will say it's a literal thing, like there's a literal God, and there's a literal religion, and there is the straight and narrow. So there is no deviation. So you might have this belief which is similar to mine, but it's not exactly what I believe, so it's wrong, and you'll be condemned for it. Some people believe that, and they're entitled to that belief. But the point is there's lots of different ways of interpreting the same message, and it seems like the message that is consistent through Stoicism, it's consistent through Buddhism, and this is the first legit Christian book I've read, but a lot of the message is pretty much the same as the other ones. Um, just to recap, I guess, since I'm on this train, the recap is meditation is good to understand yourself. We need to experience connection to feel love and to feel deep peace. Focusing on what's true and not what's not true, not what's not real. That's chapter 11. That's where we're at, and now we're at chapter 11 rather. Cynicism. It's a poor way to live life. To be a pessimist all the time. To be critical of everything all the time. Even when you think you're protecting yourself. So yeah, thank you. That's good. It's a good. It's, you and me having different core beliefs, but the general theme is it's being interpreted. It's basically the same thing, just with different roots. So yeah, cynicism. I did make a note. She says she claims beauty is evidence of God. The complexity of nature and living organisms has to denote that there is a creator. And Epictetus says the same thing in this book. It's a spoiler for next week, but Epictetus said the same thing, that if you observe the complexity of nature and how plants can take care of themselves and animals can take care of themselves without human intervention, it must be the craftsmanship of a divine creator. I don't necessarily believe that. I think because the opposite of that is coincidence, or it's it's natural selection and it's evolution, that life has been able to sustain itself through evolution. Not, but then you'll say, oh well, because a divine creator has specifically organized evolution to develop this way so that humans could evolve into who they are and plants and animals into who they are. Yeah, I mean, to each your own. I don't have a claim to what the source of evolution is. Why? Because if you trace it all the way back, it technically goes back to the Big Bang, and I have no idea why the Big Bang happens or how, or if it's a reasonable theory. But what does make sense, I guess, is if scientists can observe that the universe is continually expanding, then it makes sense that all of it came from one area from the beginning. And whether God initiated a Big Bang to happen, or if it's just coincidence, who knows? We're inserting our own opinions as to the source of the Big Bang, or to the source of evolution, or to the source of creation. So Epictetus and Jenny Allen might say that, oh, look at how complex life is. There must be a God. There must be a divine creator. Or it's just coincidence, right? Let's see. Mashed Potatoes is giving out. It's dropping a quote. If the rule brought you to this place, of what use was the rule? That was that guy in No Country for Old Men. I don't know how it applies, but that's the hardest line ever. If the rule brought you to this place, of what use was the rule? What? I don't remember the scene though. Is that the gas station? Is that the gas station scene? Come up with your own interpretation for that. So, chapter 11, don't be a cynic. Have a positive outlook on life. And if I'm going to just glance through her power of awe, transforming the power of awe, the bitter taste of cynicism. Life just sucks when you're critical of everything all the time. Instead of having a appreciation for the good things, if you live your life with one eye closed towards everything, and you're critical and cynical of everything else, it's just a poor way to live. I choose delight, she says, breaking down our own walls. Okay. Chapter 12, less important. Humility. Reject self-importance, your own greatness, and identify. Reject self-importance, your own greatness, and your identity, and be like Christ. Quote, we only find our greatness in Christ. Close quote. She doesn't use the word ego, but I say ego tells us we will have joy when we have power or money or toys. Joy actually comes when we lay these things aside and revel in God's greatness. Yeah, she doesn't ever use the word ego, but the opposite of an egomaniac is humility, and humility implies that you aren't great, but you are just a tool, or you're the facilitator of something else, of something greater than yourself. And she implies that you're not great, but God is great. So your greatness or your goodness is you exemplifying God's greatness. That's humility. Or if you're an egomaniac, you'll say, I'm great, I'm smart, I'm wise, and I am the one that's helping other people. I'm great. But if you identify with that, you'll eventually destroy yourself. Go listen to Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, my podcast on that, because the whole book is designed or is organized to explain your ego is ultimately is like the ultimate thing that leads towards unhappiness or the opposite of well-being. So yeah, destroy your ego. Joy actually comes when we lay these things aside and revel in God's greatness. Chapter 13, gratitude, even amongst tragedy and hardship. That's all I wrote. Gratitude at all times. I don't know that I have a thought about that. It's hard. It is hard to be grateful when things seem to be going shitty, but remember Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, the man who survived the concentration camps, Auschwitz, and his message was to find gratitude, to maintain all of these qualities even in the worst of circumstances. It's how you live a meaningful life. Chapter 14, God has set you free. What's the chapter title for 14? Run your race. Run your race is chapter 14. God has set you free. Use that freedom to serve others. Don't be complacent or selfish. Seek the good of others over your own comfort. God's will equals surrender and obey. Oh, that's one thing, as a post-Christian, as a post-Mormon, it's so easy to be ultra critical of Christians because they surrender their lives to God, and you say, well, you as an individual, you should live your own life, and selfishly, you should go after your cravings. But everybody teaches, everyone explains that true, pure happiness and pure peace especially, comes by, would it be biding your cravings? Can you say that, like biding your time, but biding your cravings? I don't know if I've ever used that. I'm just Googling it real fast. Yeah. I don't know. To bide means to stay put and wait. If you finish a test first, you may have to bide your time until everyone else is done and you can leave class. Basically, don't succumb to all of your cravings, and don't live selfishly, because it doesn't bring deep peace. Whether you're Christian, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're a Stoic, whether you're an atheist, whatever you are, the science backs it up, as well as psychology, as well as philosophy. Life is meaningful, and you will experience deeper peace by having control over your appetites, and especially by biding your cravings, baby. I'm gonna get that tattooed on my right butt cheek. Bide your cravings. So yeah, it sounds, it still gives me it still makes me cringe a little to surrender and obey to God's will. But that's my ego probably telling me, no, you should go fucking do whatever you want, and you should consume whatever it is that you want to consume. But it doesn't bring happiness. And I made this comparison on the last episode, I believe, where I said, when I'm playing video games, I feel guilty because I'm not being productive. And when I'm being productive, all I'm thinking about is playing video games. It's like the grass is always greener, and when you're doing the right thing, all you're thinking about is, oh, I want to be doing, I want to I want to succumb to my cravings. Like every time I'm mowing the lawn, or when I am not working and I have free time and there's stuff to do around the house and I'm doing that stuff around the house, I'm just thinking about playing video games. But when I'm playing video games, I'm thinking about all the shit that needs to be done around the house. So the point is, playing video games brings me like it's an immediate distraction. It's my numbing agent, especially when I'm like hours into video games. And sometimes I play for several hours. If playing for a reasonable amount of time and still getting your shit done is the best way to do it. But sometimes I put everything off to play video games. It brings you short-term pleasure, but long-term distress. And simultaneously, playing or doing yard work, or just going to the gym, or spending some time meal prepping or meditating, especially things like meditating, things that take time, that seem mundane, they're short-term boring or not fun or not entertaining, but long-term so good for your health, so good for your mental health. And you know what's funny? I don't even think this is the point of the final chapter of part 2 that she's talking about. She's saying the time that you have, use it to serve others, to help other people. I'm talking about not being selfish and not succumbing to all of your cravings. But basically, when you're not selfish, you are helping other people. When I'm a lot of my intention in trying to be really healthy and strong and wise is to help other people wealthier, wiser, healthier, and happier. Those are the 4 things. I did them way out of order that time. But I want those things for myself so I can convey them to other people as well. That's why I love doing this podcast. It takes me an hour and a half to record. It takes me maybe 20 minutes to edit and post. Now I'm doing 2 podcasts, so it takes me another 30, 45 minutes to post a second podcast. And you know what? I could be getting started on something else for work, so I could get done earlier, so play video games or whatever. But the point is, if you work on yourself, which is usually boring, it's usually stressful, and it's not usually fun. It's not something that people crave to do. People don't. I don't know anybody that craves to meditate or is like dying to work out for an hour and a half every day. But discipline is what gets you there, and you do it. You could do it for selfish reasons because you want to be sexy, or you want to make a lot of money, and you want to neglect a lot of people in your relationships, or you could do it with good intentions for the long term. Short-term pain for long-term success and long-term peace, right? That's the point. It'll help other people. That's the point for the chapter 14. So that's part 2. Just a really quick recap of part 2. These are your tools. This is your tool. This is her tool belt to overcoming toxic thoughts, to stop the spiral of toxic thoughts. Meditation, quiet time with God or prayer. Human connection with others and with God or nature, whatever your medium is. Focusing on what's true and not on what's not real. Be optimistic, not pessimistic. Or what's the opposite of a cynic? Because she uses the word cynic, not a pessimist. But be positive. Don't be a cynic all the time. Practice humility. Reject your ego. Practice gratitude even in the hardest of circumstances and situations. And she tells a harrowing story of one of her friend's husbands dying. And she says, "Does that shake your faith at all?" And the lady responded, "That was not even a question. In fact, if anything, I was thinking, how is God using this? How is this helping me bring God into other people's life. What is God's plan for me? Just sharing a story of someone with tremendous faith. Have gratitude in the hardest of circumstances. And then the last one is use your time to serve others, to uplift others. All your actions, your decisions, your thoughts to uplift others, and it'll bring you deep peace. The rest of the book, there's 2 more chapters. I didn't take any notes. I didn't even write the chapter headings down. I don't know why. Nothing stood out, I suppose. Part 3, Thinking as Jesus. Chapter 15 is Who Do You Think You Are? And chapter 16 is Dangerous Thinking. Sound like good chapters, right? If I'm going to cruise, Thinking with the Mind of Christ. Looking at some of this. Because Jesus had every reason to become a cynic about the world's brokenness, yet constantly chose to love sinners, you can choose to delight in God and the people around you. More examples of part 2. How to equip part 2. The well-trained mind is discipline. I trust my training. Yes. This is compound thinking again. When you practice good thoughts, practice good behaviors, they become instinct, and then when even harder things come, you'll be well equipped to handle them. Just like that lady whose husband died. If she had lived her life neglecting her belief in God, but also her ability to have good thoughts, if she was always having negative thoughts about herself and others, then when shit hits the fan, she's going to be ultra critical. Instead, it sounds like she was well-disciplined, trained her thoughts, trained her mind, trained her body, and is able to take a really hard situation and turn it into a positive. Be well-trained. I trust my training. Think of who you really are as a son or daughter of God. That's chapter 15. And chapter 16, Dangerous Thinking. Basically, she's, if I remember, this is her... She tells a story about her, I don't have much thoughts. She tells a story, she's like, I'm writing this book in my pajamas in bed, and all these thoughts, they come to my mind because I've been practicing singular focus. I didn't write anything down. So I'm going to move on. That's the book. Get Out of Your Head by Jenny Allen. Stopping the spiral of toxic thoughts. Whether you're Christian or you're not a Christian, or you're a yogi or a Buddhist or atheist or agnostic or whatever you are, there's a lot of good principles to live by in this book. A lot of good notes. And I'm glad that I read it, even though a lot of it made me cringe. I got to get over that. I got to be better. I have to be more open-minded, especially since the point of my podcast is to take all the good advice in and apply it to my life. So, and there's going to be a lot of advice that comes from people whose origin of belief I disagree with, and I got to be better about hearing them. So, that's Get Out of Your Thoughts. Next week, I already shared it. Epictetus's Discourses and Selected Writings. This will be the Stoic comparison to the Christian self-improvement book. So come join me next week. I will be here Monday, I believe, right on time. So you don't have to worry about coming back for another day. I'm going to be posting this tomorrow. I'm also going to be posting the summary tomorrow in Here's the Point with Caden Kelly. That's 15 minutes or less if you want to check that out, or if you want to share that with a friend or family member. You can also share my Instagram page. I post an episode on my Instagram, less than 15 minutes. So easy. While you're making dinner or while you're taking a shower, you can listen to some good conversation about a good book. That's it. So we'll be here next week. And check out my blog, cadenkelly'sblog.wordpress.com, to find access to all of my shit. And that's it, I think. Not much else to share. So go do something challenging. And you know what's challenging is to meditate. So It doesn't always have to be exercise. You don't have to challenge yourself by dieting or by exercising or by reading 100 pages a day. Simply spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes in a quiet room or outside, undistracted. Is undistracted a word? Not distracted, and alone. Not distracted meaning don't have music playing or don't have a podcast playing or don't be watching your dogs. Be in a quiet and not distracted room or environment, and think about your thoughts. Think about your actions. Think about you. Think about the world. Think about how things are happening around you and to you. Think about what's in your control. Think about what's not in your control. You'll have a greater understanding of who you are, your identity, and you'll be able to make better decisions for yourself, for those around you, and live a healthier, happier, wealthier, and wiser life. Because that's the point. That's what we're doing here on the podcast. So go do that. It's challenging. It's way harder than you think it is. It doesn't have to be for an hour. It doesn't have to be for 30 minutes. Do it for 10 minutes, even 5 minutes, whatever time you can give yourself to stop and think. If you're working all day, before you eat lunch, I would say before, because after you eat, you're usually satiated. But before you eat lunch, if you can sit down and think about your thoughts, even thinking about how you're hungry and why you're hungry and what you're going to put into your body and how it's going to make you feel, you'll make better decisions. It's a really good thing to practice, meditation. So do it wherever you're at in your work life, your regular life. Otherwise, we'll be here next week. Thanks for showing up. Mashed potatoes, GG's, bruh. We'll see you next time, everyone.
だけが読み直している